Move to the back where you belong. This is Christmas Eve, and I won't have you ruining the holiday spirit for my proper passenger.
Captain Marcus Reed doesn't whisper these words. He delivers them like gospel loud enough for the entire first-class cabin of Flight 847 to hear. He stares down at the black woman in seat 2A, seeing only her dark skin and casual clothes. He misses the quiet power in her eyes. He misses the designer details hidden in plain sight. And he completely misses the fact that she doesn't just own a ticket, she owns the entire airline. What happens next will ground more than just his plane. It will crash his entire world. The snow falls thick against the windows of Chicago O'Hare Airport on this Christmas Eve night. It's 9:47 p.m. and Flight 847 to Miami sits at the gate. Its cabin softly lit with subtle holiday decorations. Red and gold garland wraps around the first-class galley. Tiny white lights twinkle above the overhead bins. The atmosphere should feel magical, peaceful, full of Christmas spirit. Instead, it feels electric with tension. Diana Rivers sits quietly in seat 2A, a black cashmere hoodie pulled up over her head, dark jeans, white sneakers. To most eyes, she looks like any other passenger trying to get home for the holidays. But those aren't ordinary jeans, they're custom-tailored. That hoodie isn't from a department store. It's Supreme X Louis Vuitton retail price $3,200. The weathered leather bag at her feet looks vintage and worn, but it's a Hermes duffel worth more than most people's cars. Diana appears to be in her early 30s, though success has given her a timeless quality. Her dark eyes hold steady as Captain Reed towers over her seat, his silver hair perfectly styled, his uniform immaculate, with 4 gold stripes gleaming under the cabin lights. He carries himself like a man who believes he owns the sky. Behind him stands Victoria Ashford, and she is everything Reed thinks first class should be. Blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, a form-fitting red Valentino dress that probably cost $8,000, Louboutin heels that click authoritatively on the cabin floor. She's 38, stunning, and radiates the kind of entitled confidence that comes from never being told no. Victoria crosses her arms, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. I specifically requested a peaceful flight, Captain. I'm traveling to my family's estate in Palm Beach for Christmas morning. She gestures toward Diana with perfectly manicured nails, is not the ambiance I paid for. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere because of how you look? Have you ever watched someone else get treated differently because of their skin color or their clothes? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this moment stops you cold, if it makes your heart race with familiar anger, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Reed nods to Victoria like she's royalty, then turns back to Diana. His voice drops to what he probably thinks is a reasonable tone, but it carries the weight of authority and judgment. Miss, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass again. There seems to be some confusion about your seat assignment. Diana doesn't look up from her phone immediately. When she does, her expression is calm, almost serene. She reaches into her bag, that expensive bag Reed doesn't recognize, and pulls out her boarding pass. It's first-class seat 2A, purchased 3 weeks ago at full price. No confusion, Captain Diana says. Softly, her voice carries a quiet strength that makes Reed's jaw tighten. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Reed examines the boarding pass like he's looking for evidence of fraud. He holds it up to the light, checks the date, runs his finger over the printing. Other passengers begin to notice the commotion. An elderly man in 3C lowers his newspaper. A young woman in 4A stops scrolling her phone and starts watching. Isabella Martinez, the lead flight attendant, stands near the galley, her dark eyes reflecting concern and confusion. She's 28, Latina, and she's seen this kind of situation before. It never ends well. But she also knows questioning the captain could cost her job, and as a single mother supporting her family, she can't afford that risk. "This is highly irregular," Reed announces loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Security protocols require additional verification for unusual bookings. Victoria smiles a cold, satisfied expression. Exactly. Standards must be maintained. Diana finally looks up at Reed directly. When their eyes meet, something passes between them. A recognition, perhaps, or a challenge. Diana sees a man drunk on small power, threatened by her presence in a space he believes she doesn't deserve. Reed sees what he thinks is defiance, which only makes him angrier. Captain Diana says, her voice still calm, but now carrying an edge. "What exactly is unusual about my booking?" The question hangs in the air like smoke. Reed realizes he's been asked to explain himself, and he doesn't like it. Not from her, not in his cabin, not on his flight. "The timing," he says quickly. "Last-minute first-class purchases often indicate fraudulent activity. Company policy requires additional scrutiny." It's a lie, and Isabella knows it. She's processed hundreds of legitimate last-minute upgrades, but she stays silent, watching this confrontation unfold with growing dread. Diana reaches for her purse again, this time pulling out a Platinum American Express black card. She places it on the armrest between her seat and Reed's towering presence. "Would you like to verify this as well?" Captain Reed picks up the card, examines it like it might be counterfeit. The name embossed in silver letters reads, Diana Rivers. He's never heard the name before, but something about the way she carries herself, the quiet confidence in her voice, makes him pause. Victoria steps closer, her heels clicking impatiently. "Really, Captain, how long is this going to take?" Some of us have Christmas morning plans that don't involve complications. The word complications hits Diana like a slap. She's heard it before. At hotels, at restaurants, at country clubs, in boardrooms. She's always been someone's complication, someone's problem to solve or remove. Not tonight. Diana stands up slowly. She's tall, nearly eye level with Reed, and when she rises, the entire dynamic in the cabin shifts. She's no longer a passive passenger being questioned. She's a force to be reckoned with. "Captain Reed," she says, reading his name tag. "I want you to think very carefully about what you do next." 20 years ago, Diana Rivers was a 16-year-old girl flying to her grandmother's funeral in Atlanta. She wore her best black dress, the only dress her family could afford, and carried a wrinkled boarding pass for seat 3A. Her father had worked double shifts for 6 months to pay for that first-class ticket, knowing his mother's granddaughter deserved to travel with dignity to say goodbye. But when Diana walked onto that plane, the flight attendant took one look at her dark skin, her bargain store dress, and her youth, and decided she didn't belong. "Honey, the unaccompanied minor section is in the back. Someone will help you find your economy seat." Diana tried to explain. She showed her boarding pass. She explained that her father had paid full price, that she wasn't an unaccompanied minor, that she was traveling to a funeral. But the flight attendant's smile never wavered, and her assumptions never changed. "Let's not make this difficult," the woman had said loud enough for other passengers to hear. "I'm sure there's been some mistake." Diana spent that flight in the back row, humiliated, her first-class ticket crumpled in her pocket. She watched through the curtain as other passengers, white passengers, enjoyed the seats her father had sacrificed to provide. She made a promise to herself that day she would never be powerless again. Today at 34, Diana Rivers owns a $12 billion empire. Rivers Global Holdings controls luxury hotels, private jet companies, commercial real estate, and as of 3 days ago, Prestige Airways. She didn't just succeed in business, she conquered it. Forbes calls her the youngest self-made billionaire of her generation. Harvard Business School teaches case studies about her acquisition strategies. The Wall Street Journal features her on covers with headlines like, "The New Rules of Power." But Diana didn't acquire Prestige Airways for profit. She bought it for justice. For 6 months, her legal team had been collecting evidence of discrimination complaints against Prestige Airways that had been buried, ignored, or dismissed. The pattern was clear. Minority passengers routinely faced random additional screening seat misunderstandings and service irregularities that white passengers never experienced. The company had paid millions in quiet settlements to avoid bad publicity, but nothing had changed. Diana's acquisition happened in secret. The board of directors thought they were selling to a shell company backed by international investors. They had no idea the buyer was a black woman who had experienced their discrimination firsthand. They certainly didn't know she was flying undercover on Christmas Eve to document how their employees treated passengers who looked like her. Tonight, Diana wears a $3,200 Supreme X's Louis Vuitton hoodie that looks like casual streetwear to untrained eyes. Her AG jeans are custom-tailored to fit perfectly. Her white Balenciaga sneakers cost $1,200. The vintage Hermes bag at her feet is worth $80,000, but its worn leather makes it look like something she's carried for years. Diana learned long ago that power doesn't always need to announce itself. Sometimes the most effective strategy is to blend in, observe, and let people reveal who they truly are when they think no one important is watching. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages from her legal team, her executive assistant, her board of directors. Acquisition papers were finalized at 9 a.m. this morning, Christmas Eve. Legally, she owns 51% of Prestige Airways and has full authority to make executive decisions. Her team is standing by with federal discrimination attorneys, media contacts, and comprehensive reform plans. But Diana isn't ready to reveal herself yet. She wants to see how deep the problems go. She wants Captain Reed to make choices that will show her exactly what kind of culture she's purchased and how dramatically it needs to change. Marcus Reed believes he represents the golden age of aviation. At 52, he's been flying for Prestige Airways for 25 years, back when passengers dressed up for flights and first class meant something. He remembers when flight crews were respected, when captains were treated like royalty, when the cockpit was sacred ground. In Reed's mind, he's not a bigot, he's a traditionalist. He believes in standards, in order, in maintaining the prestige that makes first class special. When he sees Diana in her hoodie and jeans, he doesn't consciously think, "This black woman doesn't belong here." He thinks this person doesn't understand the dignity of first class, but the effect is the same. Reed's personnel file locked in corporate offices. Diana now controls tells a different story. 17 complaints in 5 years. Passengers removed from flights for being disruptive when all they did was question his authority. Flight attendants reporting uncomfortable incidents they couldn't quite define. Comments about maintaining standards and preserving the experience for valued customers. Previous management buried these complaints. Reed generates loyalty among wealthy, mostly white passengers who appreciate his old-school approach. He's charming with people he considers important, authoritative, with those he doesn't. His customer satisfaction ratings from first-class passengers are consistently high, so corporate leadership ignored the warning signs. Reed has never faced real consequences for his behavior because he's careful. He never uses explicitly racist language. He frames his actions in terms of safety, security, or company policy. He's learned to discriminate in ways that are hard to prove, impossible to prosecute, and easy to explain away. Tonight, Reed is stressed about more than Diana's presence. The Christmas Eve blizzard has delayed dozens of flights, putting him behind schedule. He's supposed to be in Miami by midnight for Christmas morning with his wife Claudia, a socialite who values his captain status more than she values him. Their marriage has been strained lately. Too many nights away. Too much stress, too many arguments about money and status. Reed sees Victoria Ashford's complaint as an opportunity to assert control and solve a problem quickly. Victoria represents everything he believes. First class should be wealthy, elegant, demanding, and appreciative of hierarchy. Diana represents everything he thinks threatens that world, casual questioning present without permission. What Reed doesn't realize is that his next decisions will destroy everything he's worked to build: his pilot's license, his marriage, his reputation, his freedom. All of it hangs in the balance of how he treats a passenger he doesn't recognize. Victoria Ashford has never been told no, and at 38, she has no intention of starting tonight. She is everything American wealth aspires to be: blonde, beautiful, connected, and completely confident in her right to demand perfection from the world around her. Victoria's red Valentino dress cost $8,000 and fits her like it was painted on. Her Louboutin heels add 4 inches to her height and make every step a statement. The diamonds at her ears, throat, and wrist catch light like captured stars. She moves through the world like a woman who has never doubted her place in it. She is the daughter of pharmaceutical magnate Harrison Ashford, heiress to a fortune built on patent drugs and political connections. Her Instagram account has 2 million followers who worship her lifestyle of private jets, charity galas, and designer everything. She has been featured in Vogue, Vanity Fair, and Town & Country as the epitome of American aristocracy. Victoria's Christmas Eve travel to her family's Palm Beach estate is a tradition she guards fiercely. Every detail must be perfect: the flight, the service, the ambiance. She specifically requests flights with minimal passengers, preferring the exclusivity of a nearly empty first-class cabin. When Victoria boards Flight 847 and sees Diana in casual clothes, she experiences something like physical discomfort. To Victoria, Diana's presence disrupts the aesthetic she's paid for. The hoodie, the jeans, the relaxed posture. None of it fits Victoria's vision of first-class elegance. Victoria doesn't think of herself as racist. She thinks of herself as discerning. In her world, appearance equals status, and status equals worth. Diana's casual attire signals to Victoria's mind that she doesn't understand or respect the space she's occupying. What Victoria doesn't know is that Diana's casual outfit costs more than most people earn in a month. She doesn't recognize luxury when it doesn't conform to her narrow definition of how wealthy people should look. Victoria's complaint to Captain Reed isn't motivated by malice, it's motivated by entitlement. She genuinely believes she has the right to curate her environment, to remove elements that displease her, to demand that service providers cater to her preferences. But entitlement and malice often create the same harm. Victoria's comfort with wielding her influence to remove Diana from first class makes her an active participant in discrimination, regardless of her intentions. Her social media following her family connections, her public profile, all of it will turn against her when tonight's events become public. Victoria's fall from grace will be swift, complete, and very, very public. Isabella Martinez watches the confrontation between Captain Reed and Diana with growing dread. At 28, she's been a flight attendant for 6 years, working her way up to lead attendant on international routes. She's Latina bilingual and acutely aware of how passengers treat her differently based on their assumptions about her background. Isabella knows Reed's behavior crosses lines. She's seen him treat passengers differently based on their appearance, their accent, their perceived status. She's filed informal complaints with her supervisor, but nothing ever comes of them. Reed generates positive reviews from first-class passengers, so management considers him an asset. But Isabella also knows that challenging Reed publicly could end her career. As a single mother supporting her 8-year-old daughter and helping her parents pay for medical care, she can't afford to lose her job. The airline industry is small, and flight attendants who get labeled as difficult struggle to find work elsewhere. Isabella embodies the position of many airline employees caught between doing what's right and protecting their livelihood. Her internal conflict tonight will force her to make a choice that defines not just Diana's experience, but Isabella's own character. 29-year-old James Mitchell stands in the cockpit doorway, watching Reed's confrontation with Diana through the gap in the galley curtain. As the first officer, James is second in command, but Reed's authority on the aircraft is absolute. James is African American, a graduate of the Air Force Academy who flew combat missions before joining commercial aviation. He understands hierarchy chain of command and the importance of supporting your captain in front of passengers, but he also understands discrimination. James has faced his share of questioning passengers who seemed surprised to see a black pilot. He's been asked to show additional identification, had his credentials questioned, and dealt with passengers who requested to speak to the real pilot. Tonight, James recognizes something in Diana's calm demeanor that reminds him of his own experiences being challenged in spaces where others questioned his right to be there. He faces a choice: maintain professional protocol or intervene when he sees injustice unfolding. James represents the internal struggles within the aviation industry, where diverse employees often witness discrimination but face pressure to prioritize institutional loyalty over individual conscience. Robert Kim, a 35-year-old business traveler in seat 4C, has his phone out recording the interaction. As a Korean-American consultant who travels frequently for work, he's witnessed airline discrimination before and knows how quickly situations can escalate. Sarah Thompson, a 26-year-old travel blogger in seat 3B, is live streaming her Christmas Eve travel experience when the confrontation begins. Her followers start commenting in real time as they watch the situation unfold. Michael Davis, a 70-year-old retired professor in seat 1C, remembers flying during the civil rights era when discrimination was legal and open. He's seen enough history to recognize injustice when it's happening in front of him. Carmen Rodriguez, a 24-year-old college student in economy seat 22A, watches through the curtain separating the cabins. She's flying home to see family for Christmas, and Diana's treatment reminds her of times she's been made to feel unwelcome in spaces others take for granted. These witnesses will play crucial roles as the confrontation escalates their reactions and actions, helping to document and amplify what happens next. The stage is set. The characters are positioned. The storm outside mirrors the tension in Flight 847, where assumptions about power, place, and privilege are about to collide with reality in ways none of them expect. Diana Rivers sits in seat 2A, quietly prepared to let Captain Reed reveal exactly who he is. She doesn't know it yet, but she's about to get everything she needs to transform not just one airline, but an entire industry's approach to dignity and respect. The tension in first class crackles like electricity before a storm. Captain Reed holds Diana's boarding pass and credit card, examining them under the overhead reading light, as if they might reveal hidden secrets. Victoria stands beside him, her red Valentino dress a slash of color against the neutral cabin tones, her satisfaction barely concealed. Ms. Rivers, Reed says, emphasizing her name like it tastes wrong in his mouth. I'm going to need additional verification. Company policy requires extra scrutiny for high-value bookings that don't match our customer profile. Diana's eyebrows rise slightly. Customer profile? You understand. Reed continues his voice, carrying the patronizing tone of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. Prestige Airways caters to a specific clientele. First-class passengers typically dress appropriately for the premium experience. Isabella Martinez feels her stomach clench. She's standing 10 feet away, close enough to intervene, but paralyzed by the implications. She's seen Reed make these kinds of comments before, always carefully worded, always defensible if questioned later. But tonight feels different. Tonight feels dangerous. Victoria steps closer to Reed, her heels clicking authoritatively on the cabin floor. Captain, I fly this route every month. My family has been loyal Prestige customers for over 20 years. I specifically chose this flight for its exclusivity. She doesn't say Diana's name. She doesn't even look directly at her. Diana becomes this situation, this disruption, this problem that needs solving. Diana remains seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. But those who know how to read power recognize the stillness in her posture. She's not scared. She's not intimidated. She's watching, learning, documenting. Captain Reed, Diana says, her voice carrying across the cabin with quiet authority. What specific company policy are you referencing? I'd like to review the documentation. Reed's jaw tightens. Passengers don't usually ask for policy documentation. They usually comply, apologize, or get angry. Diana's calm request for specifics throws him off balance. Security protocols, he says quickly, aren't available for passenger review. That would compromise operational safety. It's another lie, and Isabella knows it. Passenger rights documents are supposed to be available upon request. But Diana doesn't argue. She simply nods and reaches for her phone. I understand, Diana says, opening her notes app. I'll make sure to include that in my report. Captain Marcus Reed, employee ID. She looks at his name tag, then directly into his eyes. I'll need your full employee identification for my documentation. The word report hangs in the air like smoke. Reed realizes this passenger isn't just questioning him. She's documenting him. The thought makes him angrier, more defensive. Robert Kim, the business traveler in 4C, slowly raises his phone to record. He's witnessed enough corporate discrimination to recognize the patterns. Sarah Thompson, the travel blogger in 3B, continues her live stream. Though her followers might not realize they're watching a civil rights incident unfold in real time. Victoria notices the phones. Really, she says loud enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. Must everything be turned into a spectacle? Some of us value discretion. Transparency isn't spectacle. Diana responds quietly. It's protection. Reed makes a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Instead of de-escalating, instead of calling for a supervisor, instead of simply allowing Diana to keep her paid seat, he chooses to escalate. Ma'am, Reed says, his voice rising enough that economy passengers can hear him through the curtain. Your behavior is becoming disruptive. I have the authority to remove passengers who threaten flight safety. The cabin goes silent. Even the flight attendants in the galley stop their preparations. Reed has just accused a passenger sitting quietly in her assigned seat of being a safety threat. Michael Davis, the elderly professor in 1C, lowers his newspaper completely. Captain, he says, in the firm voice of a man who taught history for 40 years, that woman has done nothing but answer your questions politely. What exactly is threatening about that? Reed spins toward the professor, his authority challenged from multiple directions. Sir, I'll ask you to remain in your seat and allow me to handle this situation, but the dam has broken. Carmen Rodriguez, the college student watching from economy, stands up despite the seatbelt sign. Excuse me, she calls through the curtain. Is everything okay up there? Other economy passengers crane their necks. Isabella realizes the entire plane is now watching this confrontation, and her training tells her to intervene before it becomes a full incident. Captain Isabella says softly, stepping closer. Perhaps we should... Isabella. Reed cuts her off sharply. Return to your duties. I'll handle this passenger. The word passenger sounds like an insult the way Reed says it. Diana notices how Reed uses Isabella's first name casual dismissive, but refers to Victoria as Ms. Ashford with respect. Diana stands up slowly. At her full height, she's nearly eye level with Reed, and when she rises, something in the cabin's energy shifts. She's no longer a seated passenger being questioned by authority. She's a person claiming her space, her dignity, her right to be treated with respect. Captain Reed, Diana says, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. I want to make sure I understand your position. You believe I'm a safety threat because I asked to see the policy you're citing. Is that correct? Reed realizes he's painted himself into a corner. Every eye in first class is on him. Phones are recording. His crew is watching. He can back down and lose face or double down and risk everything. He chooses to risk everything. Security protocol requires additional verification of suspicious bookings. Reed announces his voice now carrying the false authority of someone who knows he's being recorded. This passenger's documentation requires enhanced screening. Reed holds Diana's Platinum American Express card up to the light, rotating it slowly, as if searching for signs of forgery. The card, with its distinctive black color and embossed lettering, is clearly authentic to anyone familiar with premium credit instruments. But Reed makes a show of examining every detail. Interesting, he murmurs loud enough for others to hear. We see a lot of counterfeit cards these days. Very sophisticated. Victoria nods sagely. The lengths people will go to. It's really quite sad. Diana watches this performance with the patience of someone who has seen this script played out before. But now she's not a powerless 16-year-old. Now she has the resources to ensure this performance has consequences. Captain Diana says, pulling out her phone, "I'm going to call American Express's Platinum Concierge Service. They can verify this card's authenticity in real time. Would that address your concerns?" Reed's performance stumbles. Legitimate card verification would end his pretext for removing Diana, but it would also expose his accusations as baseless. Company policy. Reed says quickly prohibits passengers from making phone calls during boarding procedures. Another lie. Isabella's face reflects her discomfort with Reed's increasingly fabricated justifications. James Mitchell. The first officer appears in the cockpit doorway. He's been listening to the confrontation, and his training tells him that situations like this can escalate beyond passenger relations into federal incidents. Captain James says, carefully using protocol language, "Ground control is requesting our updated departure status. It's a professional way of asking Reed to end this confrontation and prepare for takeoff. But Reed misinterprets James's intervention as support for his authority. First Officer Mitchell Reed says formally, "Please document this passenger interaction for our post-flight report. Ms. Rivers has been uncooperative with security verification procedures." James's face goes carefully neutral. As an African-American pilot, he recognizes the pattern of Reed's behavior. But as a first officer, he's bound by aviation hierarchy. His response will determine whether he becomes part of the problem or part of the solution. Captain James says slowly, "Federal regulations require that security concerns be specific and documented. What specific threat has this passenger demonstrated?" The question lands like a challenge. Reed realizes his first officer isn't supporting his actions. He's questioning them professionally. Sarah Thompson's live stream comments explode with viewer reactions. Someone has identified the flight number and airline. Prestige Airways begins trending on social media as viewers share the stream. The internet is faster than corporate damage control. Reed makes another catastrophic decision. Instead of answering James's question about specific threats, he chooses to assert his authority more aggressively. The threat, Reed says, his voice rising, is a passenger who refuses to comply with legitimate security procedures, who questions crew authority, who creates disruption during boarding. Diana has been sitting quietly answering questions politely and requesting policy clarification. But Reed's public description makes her sound dangerous, non-compliant, aggressive. Robert Kim's recording captures every word. The contrast between Diana's calm behavior and Reed's heated accusations becomes stark when viewed through a camera lens. So Diana says, still seated, still calm, "I'd like to formally request that you contact your supervisor. This situation appears to require management intervention." Reed laughs, actually laughs at her request. The sound carries across the cabin like a slap. "Miss Rivers," Reed says, his voice dripping with condescension, "I am the management on this aircraft. My word is law at 30,000 feet. Your options are simple comply with crew instructions or exit the aircraft." The ultimatum lands in silence. Reed has now explicitly threatened to remove a passenger for requesting to speak to management. Victoria claps softly. finally. Standards matter, but Michael Davis, the retired professor, has heard enough. "Captain," he says, his voice carrying the authority of someone who lived through the civil rights era. "I've been flying for 60 years. I know the difference between safety procedures and harassment. This is harassment." Reed spins toward the professor, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Sir, I'll ask you once more to remain out of this matter." "No," Michael says firmly. "I won't remain silent while you abuse your authority. This young woman has done nothing wrong." The cabin erupts in murmurs. Passengers taking sides, flight attendants looking panicked, economy passengers standing to see what's happening. Reed's confrontation with Diana has become a full aircraft incident. Isabella finally finds her voice. "Captain, perhaps we should contact the gate supervisor." Isabella Reed snaps. "I told you to handle your duties, not question mine." The sharp dismissal of Isabella, combined with his aggressive tone toward Diana and the professor, creates a pattern that even supportive passengers begin to recognize. Carmen Rodriguez, the college student from economy, pushes through the curtain. "Excuse me, but we can hear everything back there. Why are you treating her like this?" Now Reed faces challenges from first-class economy, his own crew, and social media. But instead of recognizing that he's created an untenable situation, he digs deeper. This aircraft, Reed announces to the entire cabin, will not depart until all passengers comply with crew instructions and security protocols. Anyone who continues to disrupt these procedures will be removed. He's essentially taken the entire flight hostage to force Diana's compliance. 200 passengers will be delayed. Misconnections ruin Christmas plans because Reed refuses to back down from his discriminatory stance. Diana looks around the cabin at all the faces watching this confrontation. Some supportive, some confused, some angry at the delay, some recording everything. She realizes this moment has become bigger than just her treatment. It's become a test of what people will tolerate, what they'll speak up against, what they'll allow to happen in their presence. She makes a decision that will change everything. Diana stands up slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. When she reaches her full height, she looks directly into Captain Reed's eyes with the kind of steady gaze that makes powerful men uncomfortable. "Captain Reed," she says, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent cabin. "I want to make sure I understand your position completely. You're claiming I'm a safety threat. What specific actions have I taken that justify this claim?" Reed feels the weight of every eye in the aircraft on him. His accusations sound increasingly hollow when Diana forces him to specify them. But backing down now would mean admitting his authority was wrong, his judgment flawed, his actions discriminatory. Instead of retreating, Reed escalates. "Your non-compliance with crew instructions constitutes disruptive behavior under federal aviation regulations." Reed announces, his voice taking on the formal tone of someone quoting policy he doesn't fully understand. "Your questioning of legitimate security procedures suggests potential security risk." Diana pulls out her phone and opens the voice recorder app. "I'm documenting this interaction for federal review. Please state clearly what crew instructions I've failed to follow." The sight of Diana recording their conversation makes Reed even angrier. In his mind, passengers shouldn't document crew interactions. They should comply, defer to authority, accept whatever treatment they receive. "Put that phone away immediately," Reed demands. "Recording crew interactions without permission violates company policy." It doesn't. Passengers have legal rights to record discrimination, and Isabella knows it. But Reed's desperation is driving him to make increasingly false claims. James Mitchell steps fully into the cabin from the cockpit. As first officer, he has the authority to question safety decisions that affect flight operations. Captain James says carefully, "Can you specify which federal regulation prohibits passengers from requesting policy documentation?" The question cuts through Reed's fabricated justifications like a knife. James is asking him to cite actual regulations, not invented policies. First Officer Mitchell Reed says, his voice tight with contained rage. I don't need to justify my authority to crew members or passengers. My decisions on this aircraft are final. But James doesn't back down. His military training, his aviation education, and his personal experience with discrimination combine to give him clarity about what's happening. Captain, with respect, federal law requires that passenger removals be justified by specific safety threats or regulatory violations. Documentation protects both the airline and the crew. Reed realizes his first officer is professionally challenging his judgment. In Reed's worldview, this represents a collapse of hierarchy, order, and respect. Are you questioning my authority? First Officer Reed asks, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. The entire cabin holds its breath. James faces a career-defining moment. Support his captain's discriminatory actions, or stand up for federal regulations and passenger rights? I'm questioning whether this interaction meets federal standards for passenger removal, James says clearly. That's my responsibility as First Officer. Victoria Ashford watches this exchange with growing alarm. What started as a simple request to remove an inappropriately dressed passenger has become a crew conflict that threatens her travel plans. Honestly, Victoria says loud enough for everyone to hear, can't this be resolved quickly? Some of us have important Christmas obligations. Diana turns toward Victoria, and for the first time her calm demeanor shows a crack of emotion. Important obligations, Diana repeats quietly. Like getting a black woman removed from first class because her presence makes you uncomfortable. The words land like bombs in the cabin silence. Diana has named what everyone can see, but no one has said directly. This isn't about dress codes or security procedures, it's about race. Victoria's face flushes red. How dare you? I never said anything about race. This is about standards, about appropriate behavior, about maintaining spaces where people like me know our place, Diana finishes. Reed sees the conversation spiraling beyond his control. Racial discrimination allegations create federal liability, media attention, and corporate investigation. He needs to end this confrontation before it becomes a civil rights incident. But instead of de-escalating, Reed makes the worst decision of his career. Security, he calls toward the galley where Isabella stands with her colleagues. I need assistance with a disruptive passenger removal. The words echo through the aircraft. Reed has officially requested Diana's removal based on fabricated safety concerns, false policy citations, and discriminatory treatment. Isabella's training conflicts with her conscience. Company policy says support the captain. Federal law says don't participate in discrimination. Her personal experience says speak up when witnessing injustice. She makes a choice that will save her job and her integrity. Captain Isabella says loudly enough for passengers to hear, I need to see documented justification before participating in passenger removal procedures. Reed spins toward Isabella with fury. Flight Attendant Martinez, you are refusing a direct order from your captain. I'm requesting documentation as required by federal anti-discrimination training, Isabella responds. All crew members are mandated to report suspected civil rights violations. The cabin erupts in murmurs. Isabella has essentially accused Reed of civil rights violations in front of 200 passengers and multiple recording devices. Sarah Thompson's live stream has exploded to over 50,000 viewers. Comments pour in faster than she can read them. This is discrimination. Someone call the news. What airline is this? Get this pilot fired. Robert Kim continues recording while simultaneously posting updates to Twitter. The hashtag #FlightDiscrimination begins trending. Michael Davis stands up in his seat. Captain, I'm a retired university professor. I've seen discrimination my entire career. This young woman has been polite, compliant, and patient, while you've been aggressive, dishonest, and discriminatory. Carmen Rodriguez pushes further into first class, despite the seatbelt sign. This is wrong. She bought her ticket just like everyone else. Reed realizes he's lost control, not just of Diana, but of his entire aircraft. Passengers are standing. Crew members are challenging him. Social media is documenting everything. He faces a choice: admit his mistakes and try to salvage the situation, or escalate to the point of no return. He chooses escalation. Reed moves to the aircraft's PA system, his hands shaking slightly with adrenaline and rage. When he picks up the handset, his voice broadcasts throughout the entire aircraft, reaching not just the passengers in their seats, but the ground crew outside, the gate agents in the terminal, and through Sarah's live stream, thousands of viewers worldwide. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." Reed's voice carries the official tone of authority, but those listening carefully can hear the tremor underneath. "We are experiencing a passenger compliance issue that requires resolution before departure. Federal aviation regulations require all passengers to follow crew instructions without question. Failure to comply with safety procedures puts all passengers at risk." The announcement reverberates through the cabin like an accusation. Reed hasn't named Diana directly, but every passenger knows exactly who he's talking about. He's used the aircraft's communication system to publicly label her as a safety threat to 200 people. Diana feels the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, every phone camera pointed in her direction. She's experienced professional humiliation before, but never so publicly, never so deliberately, never with such obvious racial undertones. But Diana Rivers didn't build a $12 billion empire by crumbling under pressure. She responds to Reed's public humiliation with the kind of calm dignity that makes real power recognizable. She stands up again this time, moving into the aisle, where everyone on the aircraft can see her. Her voice, when she speaks, doesn't need amplification to carry authority. "Fellow passengers," Diana says her words, reaching every corner of the aircraft. "I want to apologize that your Christmas Eve travel has been disrupted by this situation. I have done nothing but sit in my assigned seat, answer questions politely, and request documentation of the policies being cited against me." The contrast is stark. Reed used the PA system to make vague accusations about safety and compliance. Diana speaks directly to fellow human beings, acknowledging their inconvenience while maintaining her dignity. "What you're witnessing," Diana continues, "is what happens when passengers who don't fit certain expectations are treated as threats rather than customers." Victoria Ashford can't tolerate losing control of the narrative. "This is ridiculous," she calls out loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I fly first class, specifically to avoid these kinds of situations. Why should legitimate passengers be subjected to this disruption?" Diana turns toward Victoria with the kind of look that has made corporate executives apologize in boardrooms. "What kind of situation exactly?" Diana asks. "A black woman sitting in first class, a passenger asking for policy documentation, someone refusing to be intimidated by false accusations." Victoria realizes she's walked into a trap. Any answer she gives will either sound explicitly racist or admit that Diana has done nothing wrong. This isn't about race," Victoria stammers. "This is about behavior, about standards, whose standards Diana interrupts. The standard that says I should accept discrimination quietly. The standard that says questioning authority makes me dangerous. The standard that says my comfort matters less than yours." The cabin falls silent except for the click of phone cameras and the soft hum of the aircraft's systems. Every passenger is forced to choose support. Reed's authority or recognize Diana's humanity. Michael Davis breaks the silence. In 60 years of flying, he says his voice carrying the weight of witnessed history. "I've seen this same script played out countless times. Different airlines, different years, different faces, but always the same assumption: some people belong and others don't." Carmen Rodriguez nods from the curtain between cabins. "My grandmother told me stories about being removed from spaces because people decided she didn't belong. I thought we were past that." Isabella Martinez feels something break inside her chest. her own experiences with discrimination, her fear of speaking up, her complicity in this moment through silence. It all crystallizes into a decision that will define her career. Captain Reed Isabella says, her voice shaking but clear. I cannot and will not participate in the removal of this passenger. Her behavior has been exemplary. Your treatment of her violates company anti-discrimination policies and federal civil rights law. The announcement lands like a thunderbolt. A crew member has publicly refused to follow her captain's orders, citing discrimination and federal law violations. Reed's face goes pale, then red, then pale again. He realizes he's lost control of not just the passenger situation, but his entire crew. Mutiny in commercial aviation is career-ending, but civil rights violations are federal crimes. James Mitchell steps fully into the passenger cabin. Captain, he says formally, I recommend we contact ground supervision immediately. This situation requires management intervention. Reed sees his authority, his career, his reputation collapsing in real time. But instead of cutting his losses, instead of apologizing and trying to salvage something from this disaster, he makes one final fatal decision. He calls for Diana's physical removal. Security to aircraft 847. Reed speaks into his radio, his voice tight with barely controlled desperation. Passenger removal required, non-compliant individual refusing crew instructions, potential safety threat. The words crackle through the radio and echo in the cabin. Reed has now officially requested armed security to remove Diana from the aircraft, based on accusations that everyone present knows are false. Diana doesn't move from her position in the aisle. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't resist, doesn't give Reed any justification for escalation. She simply stands with the quiet dignity of someone who has faced down corporate boardrooms, hostile takeovers, and billion-dollar negotiations. Captain Reed Diana says clearly, I want everyone on this aircraft to witness what happens next. You are about to have a black woman forcibly removed from a seat she paid for based on accusations you cannot substantiate, because I asked to see the policies you claim I violated. The cabin holds its breath. 200 passengers are about to witness either a peaceful resolution or a civil rights violation broadcast live to thousands of social media followers. Through the aircraft windows, passengers can see airport security approaching across the tarmac. 3 officers in uniform, their presence transforming Reed's accusations into potential legal action. Sarah Thompson's live stream viewer count has exploded to over 100,000. Comments flood the screen faster than she can read. This is insane. Record everything. What's the captain's name? Sue them all. Robert Kim continues, documenting while simultaneously posting updates. Prestige Airways. Captain demands removal of black passenger for safety threat. Sitting quietly in assigned seat. The security officers board the aircraft, and their presence changes the entire dynamic. What was a passenger service issue has become a potential criminal matter. The lead officer, Sergeant Williams, immediately assesses the situation with trained eyes. What seems to be the problem? Captain Sergeant Williams asks, his tone professional but cautious. Reed straightens his uniform and assumes his most authoritative posture. Sergeant, I have a passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions and safety procedures. She's been disruptive, argumentative, and is creating a safety hazard for other passengers. Sergeant Williams looks at Diana, standing calmly in the aisle, then at the cabin full of passengers watching intently. His experience tells him something doesn't match between Reed's description and the scene before him. Ma'am, Sergeant Williams addresses Diana directly. The captain says you've been disruptive. Can you tell me what's happened from your perspective? Diana's response is measured, factual, and devastating to Reed's credibility. Officer, I boarded the aircraft and sat in my assigned seat 2A, which I purchased 3 weeks ago at full price. Captain Reed approached me and demanded additional verification of my documentation. When I asked to see the policies he was citing, he accused me of being non-compliant. When I requested to speak to a supervisor, he called me a safety threat. I have not raised my voice, have not disobeyed any instructions, and have not moved from my assigned seat until this moment. Sergeant Williams nods, then looks around the cabin. Did anyone witness this interaction? Hands go up throughout first class. Michael Davis speaks first. Officer, I've been watching this entire situation. This young woman has been nothing but polite, while the captain has become increasingly aggressive and unreasonable. Isabella steps forward. Sergeant, I'm the lead flight attendant. In my professional opinion, this passenger has done nothing to justify removal. She's been cooperative and respectful throughout. James Mitchell joins the group. I'm the first officer. Captain Reed's accusations don't match federal standards for passenger removal. I've documented my concerns about this interaction. Sergeant Williams realizes he's walked into a discrimination case, not a security incident. His training and legal obligations are clear. He cannot participate in civil rights violations. Captain Sergeant Williams says carefully. I need specific documentation of safety threats or regulatory violations before I can remove any passenger. What specific actions has this passenger taken that justify removal? Reed's facade finally cracks completely. Faced with the requirement to specify actual violations rather than make vague accusations, he reveals the true nature of his motivations. She doesn't belong in first class. Reed says, his voice rising with frustration. Look at her hoodie jeans attitude. This isn't what first-class service is about. We have standards to maintain, a certain clientele to survey. The words hang in the cabin like poison gas. Reed has finally said what everyone knew, but no one could prove. This isn't about safety or policy. It's about who he thinks deserves to sit in first class. Sergeant Williams exchanges glances with his colleagues. They've just heard a commercial airline captain explicitly state that passenger removal is based on appearance and social profiling, not safety or regulatory concerns. Captain Sergeant Williams says formally, what you've described constitutes discrimination based on appearance and possibly race. I cannot participate in removing a passenger based on those criteria. Reed's world collapses in that moment. Security refuses to support him. His crew has turned against him. Passengers are recording everything. Social media is broadcasting his discrimination live to the world. But Diana isn't finished with him yet. She reaches into her bag and pulls out her phone. Her voice when she speaks is calm, but carries the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Marcus, she says, using Reed's first name with deliberate familiarity. I think it's time you understood exactly who you're dealing with. She dials a number, puts the phone on speaker, and when it connects, her words will destroy Reed's career forever. Legal department. This is Diana Rivers. Yes, the Diana Rivers. I need you to execute emergency protocol. 7 immediately. Reed's face goes white as the voice on the phone responds. Ms. Rivers confirmed. What's the situation? Diana looks directly into Reed's eyes as she delivers his professional death sentence. Employee Marcus Reed ID number 4758 has just committed multiple federal violations, including discrimination, false safety accusations, and abuse of authority. I want his pilot's license suspended immediately and federal charges filed within the hour. The phone conversation continues, but Reed can't hear the details over the roaring in his ears. He's beginning to understand that the passenger he tried to humiliate owns something more than a first-class ticket. What did you say your name was? Reed whispers. Diana hands him her business card with devastating calm. Diana Rivers, chairman and CEO, Prestige Airways. As of 3 days ago, you work for me. Correction, you worked for me. The cabin explodes in shocked murmurs, gasps, and the sound of phones capturing Reed's moment of recognition. The passenger he tried to remove for not belonging in first class doesn't just belong there. She owns the entire airline. Reed's legs give out slightly. He leans against a seat back as the full implications crash over him like a wave. Not only has he discriminated against a passenger, he's discriminated against his own boss. On camera, with witnesses, while refusing to back down even when given multiple opportunities. Victoria Ashford's confident smirk vanishes entirely. Her complaints about Diana's presence have just been revealed as complaints about the airline's owner. Her demands for removal have become demands that a CEO be ejected from her own aircraft. The irony would be funny if the consequences weren't so serious. But Diana isn't done delivering justice. Reed's personal humiliation is just the beginning of the accountability he's about to face. The business card trembles in Captain Reed's hand as he reads the embossed lettering, Diana Rivers, Chairman and CEO, Prestige Airways. The words seem impossible, but the phone conversation continuing on speaker leaves no room for doubt. Ms. Rivers, the voice from legal continues, Mr. Reed's access to all Prestige Airways systems has been revoked as of this moment. His pilot certification review is already underway with the FAA. Airport security has been notified to stand by for potential federal charges. Diana keeps the phone on speaker, ensuring every passenger crew member and security officer hears the immediate consequences of Reed's actions. Her voice remains calm, professional, terrifyingly controlled. Additionally, Diana continues into the phone, I want a complete review of all discrimination complaints filed against employee Reed in the past 5 years. If previous management buried or ignored reports, I want those responsible held accountable as well. Reed's mind races through implications. Not only is his career ending in real time, but Diana's investigation will expose years of protected misconduct. Previous managers who covered for him, executives who ignored complaints, supervisors who prioritized customer satisfaction over civil rights, all of them will face scrutiny. Legal. Diana says, patch me through to Director of Operations immediately. The hold music that plays creates surreal contrast to the shocked silence in the aircraft cabin. Passengers sit, frozen, witnessing a corporate coup executed with a phone call and a business card. Victoria Ashford tries to process what she's hearing. The woman she demanded be removed from first class doesn't just belong there. She owns the airline, the plane, and apparently the power to destroy careers with a phone conversation. Director Harris on the line, the phone announces. David Diana says, addressing the airline's operations chief, I'm on aircraft 847 at Chicago O'Hare. Captain Reed has just committed multiple federal violations in front of 200 witnesses and several live streams. I want him removed from service immediately. Ms. Rivers' Director Harris responds, his voice tight with panic. What specifically happened? Diana's response is clinical. Devastating. Complete. Captain Reed demanded my removal from first class based on my race and appearance. When challenged, he fabricated safety threats, cited non-existent policies, and requested security assistance to forcibly remove me from a seat I purchased legally. He used the aircraft PA system to publicly humiliate me and refused crew member requests for documentation. The entire incident has been recorded and is currently broadcasting live on social media. The silence from Director Harris stretches long enough for passengers to exchange glances. Finally, Jesus Christ, Ms. Rivers, we had no idea about Reed's. There were never any formal complaints that reached my desk. David Diana's voice drops to something approaching menace. That's exactly the problem we're going to fix. How many discrimination complaints were buried to protect airline operations? How many passengers suffered because addressing bias was inconvenient? Director Harris realizes he's being recorded, that his answers will determine his own future with the company. Ms. Rivers. I'll personally review all personnel files immediately. If there were covered-up incidents, those responsible will be held accountable. Diana nods, though Harris can't see her. Good. Now patch me through to the gate supervisor. Captain Reed needs immediate escort from this aircraft. While Diana's phone call continues, Reed's world collapses in digital real time. His phone buzzes with alerts, each notification a nail in his professional coffin. Prestige Airways employee access suspended pilot credentials status under review company. Email access revoked, employee portal login disabled, Federal Aviation Database investigation initiated. Reed stares at his phone as 25 years of aviation authority disappears with automated messages. His pilot's license, his employee ID. His access to aircraft panels, his professional reputation, all of it evaporating while 200 passengers watch. Isabella Martinez's phone chimes with a company-wide alert emergency leadership directive. Captain Marcus Reed relieved of duty effective immediately. All crew report directly to Chairman Rivers for operational guidance. James Mitchell receives the same message along with additional instructions. First Officer Mitchell assume command of Aircraft 847. Await further direction from CEO Rivers. The irony isn't lost on anyone in the cabin. Reed tried to remove Diana for not belonging in first class, but the airline's computer networks have just confirmed that Reed no longer belongs anywhere in the company. Sarah Thompson's live stream explodes with viewer reactions as her followers realize they're witnessing a corporate executive destroying an employee's career in real time. Comments flood faster than she can read. This is insane, she owns the airline. That pilot is so fired, justice in real time. Robert Kim posts updates to social media. Breaking Prestige Airways CEO reveals herself. After captain demands her removal for not belonging in first class. Pilot's career ends live on camera. The hashtags Diana Rivers Prestige. Airways and airline justice begin trending across multiple platforms. News organizations start picking up passenger footage. The story spreads faster than corporate communications can respond. Victoria Ashford realizes her complaints have been recorded. Her discriminatory comments captured, her demands for removal documented. Her social media followers, her family connections, her public reputation, all of it now tied to supporting the discrimination of an airline CEO. She tries to distance herself from the situation. I had no idea who she was, Victoria calls out weakly. I was just asking for proper customer service. Diana turns toward Victoria with the kind of look that has corporate boardrooms. Define proper customer service. Does it include removing black passengers because their presence makes you uncomfortable? Victoria's face flushes red. I never said anything about race. This was about appropriate attire, about maintaining standards. Whose standards? Diana interrupts. Standards that judge passenger worth by skin color. Standards that assume black women can't afford first class. Standards that prioritize your comfort over my civil rights. The exchange creates uncomfortable recognition among other passengers. How many times have they made similar assumptions? How often have they stayed silent when witnessing discrimination? How frequently have they prioritized their comfort over others' dignity? Diana ends her phone calls and addresses the entire cabin with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of powerful people. Ladies and gentlemen, she begins, her voice carrying to every corner of the aircraft. I apologize that your Christmas Eve travel has been disrupted by this incident. I'm Diana Rivers, and as of 3 days ago, I own this airline. The formal announcement lands in stunned silence. Passengers who assumed they were witnessing a customer service dispute realize they've watched a CEO be discriminated against by her own employee. What you witnessed tonight, Diana continues, is exactly why I acquired Prestige Airways. Not for profit, not for expansion, but to end this kind of treatment forever. Reed, still holding her business card, finally finds his voice. You bought the airline just to... To what? Set me up. This was entrapment. Diana's laugh has no warmth in it. Marcus, you set yourself up. I gave you multiple opportunities to de-escalate, to show basic human decency, to follow your own company's anti-discrimination policies. Instead, you chose to escalate at every turn. Reed's desperation makes him defensive, angry, grasping for justification. I was following protocol, maintaining safety. Protecting the integrity of first-class service, you were protecting white supremacy. Diana responds with devastating calm. You saw a black woman in a space you felt she didn't deserve and used your authority to try to remove her. That's not protocol, it's prejudice. Isabella Martinez steps forward, her voice stronger now that she understands Diana's true authority. Ms. Rivers, I want to formally apologize for not intervening sooner. I knew Captain Reed's behavior was wrong, but I was afraid of losing my job. Diana's expression softens when she addresses Isabella. Your fear was legitimate. The culture I inherited made employees choose between doing what's right and protecting their livelihoods. That ends now. James Mitchell approaches the group. Ms. Rivers, I should have spoken up earlier as well. As a black pilot, I recognized what was happening, but I let rank and protocol silence me. Diana nods. James, your position was impossible. You were asked to choose between supporting discriminatory authority and challenging aviation hierarchy. Under my leadership, challenging discrimination will be protected, not punished. Sergeant Williams, who has been observing the revelations, addresses Diana directly. Ma'am, do you want to press charges against Captain Reed? Based on what I witnessed, there are grounds for federal civil rights violations. Diana considers the question, while the entire cabin waits for her response. Reed's future criminal charges, civil lawsuits, public prosecution hangs in the balance of her decision. Sergeant Diana says finally, I want the maximum legal consequences permitted under federal law, not for revenge, but for accountability. If powerful people face no consequences for discrimination, they'll continue discriminating. Reed's legs buckle slightly. Criminal charges mean more than losing his job. They mean potential prison time, permanent criminal record, lifetime ban from aviation. Financial ruin from legal costs. Please. Reed whispers, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. I have a family, a mortgage, a reputation. So did every passenger you've discriminated against over the years? Diana interrupts. So do the crew members who stayed silent rather than challenge your authority. So do the travelers who were humiliated in spaces they had every right to occupy. Victoria attempts one last desperate intervention. Surely we can resolve this privately. I have connections, influence, resources. Diana turns toward Victoria with something approaching pity. Victoria, your connections won't protect you from viral videos of supporting racial discrimination. Your influence won't erase recorded demands to remove a CEO from her own airplane. Your resources won't buy back the reputation you've destroyed. The truth hits Victoria like physical blow. Her discriminatory comments are recorded shared trending. Her pharmaceutical heiress status can't protect her from social media justice. Her privileged life is about to become very, very public. But Diana isn't finished delivering consequences. Reed's individual accountability is just the beginning of the transformation she has planned. The aircraft door opens again, and this time federal agents enter. Unlike airport security, these officers represent serious legal consequences. FBI agents specializing in civil rights violations have been monitoring the situation through passenger live streams and Diana's legal team notifications. Special Agent Thompson flashes her badge as she approaches the group clustered around Seat 2A. Ms. Rivers, I'm Agent Thompson with the FBI's Civil Rights Division. We've been following this incident through social media reports and your legal team's notifications. The presence of federal agents transforms the atmosphere entirely. This is no longer an airline customer service issue or even a corporate personnel matter. Diana's treatment has become a federal civil rights investigation. Agent Thompson addresses Reed directly. Captain Reed, you're being detained for investigation of federal civil rights violations under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and federal aviation anti-discrimination statutes. Reed's face goes ashen. Federal charges for doing my job. Agent Thompson's response is professional but firm. So discriminating against passengers based on race while in a position of federal authority constitutes violation of multiple federal laws. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda rights echo through the cabin as Agent Thompson formally arrests Reed. Passengers record every moment on their phones. The man who demanded Diana's removal for not belonging in first class is handcuffed and escorted off the aircraft by federal agents. The perp walk down the jet bridge becomes immediate viral content. Reed, still in his captain's uniform with its 4 gold stripes, is led away in handcuffs while passengers film through aircraft windows. His fall from authority to criminal suspect takes less than an hour. Isabella Martinez watches Reed's arrest with a mixture of relief and sadness. She's worked with him for 3 years, seen his discrimination firsthand, but also witnessed moments of professional competence. His downfall feels both inevitable and shocking. Ms. Rivers Isabella says quietly, "I want you to know that several crew members have been afraid to report Captain Reed's behavior. There were incidents, complaints, passengers who were mistreated, but we were told challenging him could end our careers." Diana nods grimly. "Isabella, that culture of silence ends today. Under my ownership, reporting discrimination will be protected, rewarded, and required. Employees who speak up for passenger rights will be promoted, not punished." James Mitchell approaches them, his expression troubled. "Ms. Rivers, I need to report that Captain Reed wasn't alone in this behavior. There are other pilots, supervisors, managers who've created hostile environments for minority passengers and employees." Diana's eyes sharpen with interest. "James, I want you to work directly with our new Chief Ethics Officer to document every incident you're aware of. We're going to clean house completely." The mention of a Chief Ethics Officer surprises James. "You already have someone in that position?" Diana smiles for the first time since this confrontation began. "Isabella, congratulations on your promotion. Your willingness to stand up to Reed despite personal risk shows exactly the kind of integrity we need in leadership." Isabella's eyes widen in shock. "Ms. Rivers, I don't understand. You're promoting me to Director of Passenger Experience and Chief Ethics Officer." Diana confirms. "Your new salary is $145,000 annually, plus equity compensation. Your first assignment is ensuring this kind of discrimination never happens again. The transformation is immediate and visible." Isabella, who minutes ago was afraid to challenge her captain, now holds executive authority to prevent future discrimination. Her annual income has tripled, her career has been transformed, and her moral courage has been validated. While Reed faces federal charges, Victoria Ashford confronts her own rapidly unfolding nightmare. Her phone buzzes constantly with notifications as videos of her discriminatory comments spread across social media platforms. Sarah Thompson's live stream captured every word of Victoria's complaints about Diana's presence, her demands for removal, her dismissive comments about standards and appropriate passengers. The footage shows her supporting discrimination while wearing $8,000 worth of designer clothing, creating stark visual contrast between privilege and prejudice. Victoria tries to control the narrative through her own social media accounts, but her attempts at explanation only make things worse. Her posts about misunderstanding and being taken out of context generate immediate backlash from viewers who watched the live footage. The hashtag Victoria Ashford begins trending alongside Prestige Airways discrimination. Users identify her family connections, her pharmaceutical heiress status, her country club memberships. Every aspect of her privileged life becomes public scrutiny. Her Instagram account, carefully curated to showcase wealth and status, becomes a liability. Photos of charity galas and exclusive events are flooded with comments about her discrimination. Her 2 million followers begin unfollowing in massive numbers. Diana observes Victoria's digital downfall with professional interest. "Victoria, you're experiencing what happens when privilege meets accountability in the social media age. Your words have consequences beyond this aircraft. Victoria's desperation becomes palpable. Ms. Rivers, surely we can resolve this privately. My family has resources, connections, influence in pharmaceutical industries. Are you attempting to bribe me? Diana asks, her voice carrying dangerous quiet. Victoria realizes her mistake immediately. Offering financial incentives to avoid discrimination consequences could constitute additional federal violations. No, I was just suggesting. I didn't mean to imply. Diana's legal background makes her precise with language. Victoria, anything you say is being recorded by multiple devices and witnessed by federal agents. I suggest you consult an attorney before speaking further. The suggestion terrifies Victoria. The need for legal representation means serious consequences, potential criminal charges, civil lawsuits from other passengers who witnessed her discrimination. Victoria's Christmas plans, flying to her family's Palm Beach estate for morning celebrations, evaporate as she realizes her discrimination has been broadcast to millions of viewers. Her family's reputation, her social standing, her business connections will all be affected by tonight's viral footage. Diana uses the aircraft's communication networks to contact Prestige Airways operations worldwide. Within minutes, she's connected to corporate headquarters, regional managers, and flight operations centers across 3 continents. All stations, this is CEO Rivers with Emergency Directive Alpha. Effective immediately, all Prestige Airways personnel will implement enhanced anti-discrimination protocols. Her voice carries to airline operations around the world. Pilots preparing for departure, gate agents, processing passengers, customer service representatives handling complaints, all of them receive Diana's direct orders. Any employee who witnesses or participates in passenger discrimination based on race, appearance, or economic assumptions will be terminated immediately. Any supervisor who covers up discrimination complaints will be prosecuted to the full extent of federal law. The directive creates immediate changes across the airline's global operations. Employees who previously ignored bias suddenly understand their jobs depend on preventing it. Managers who buried complaints realize their careers hang in the balance of addressing discrimination seriously. Diana continues her company-wide announcement. Additionally, all passengers who have experienced discrimination on Prestige Airways flights in the past 5 years will be contacted for voluntary testimony. Settlement compensation will be provided, and comprehensive policy changes will be implemented based on their experiences. James Mitchell listens to these announcements with growing amazement. Diana isn't just punishing individuals, she's restructuring the entire airline culture around accountability and respect. Crew empowerment protocols are now in effect. Diana's voice continues. Any employee can stop discriminatory behavior without fear of retaliation. Direct reporting to corporate leadership is protected. Whistleblower programs are immediately activated. Isabella realizes her new position carries enormous responsibility. She's not just an ethics officer, she's the point person for cultural transformation across a global airline. Diana's final announcement reaches every Prestige Airways operation. Customer service will now be measured not by passenger comfort, but by passenger dignity. Excellence means treating every traveler with respect, regardless of appearance, accent, or assumptions about their economic status. While Diana implements internal changes, the external response explodes across traditional and social media. Sarah Thompson's live stream has reached over 200,000 concurrent viewers, with clips being shared, analyzed, and discussed across multiple platforms. Major news organizations pick up the story. Prestige Airways CEO discriminated against by her own captain. Viral video shows airline discrimination in real time. Executive's undercover flight exposes aviation industry bias. The story resonates because it combines multiple compelling elements: corporate justice, racial discrimination, hidden identity revelation, and immediate accountability. Viewers witness not just injustice, but instant consequences delivered by someone with the power to create lasting change. Aviation industry analysts scramble to understand the implications. Diana's acquisition of Prestige Airways becomes public knowledge for the first time, revealing her strategy to reform airline culture from the inside out. Passenger advocacy groups praise Diana's response as a model for corporate accountability. Civil rights organizations point to the incident as evidence that discrimination in commercial aviation remains widespread and requires federal oversight. Stock market reactions are mixed. Prestige Airways stock initially drops as investors worry about legal liabilities and negative publicity. But by morning it recovers and rises as analysts recognize the value of ethical leadership and positive brand transformation. Other airlines begin emergency reviews of their own anti-discrimination policies. No CEO wants their company associated with the viral footage of Reid's arrest and Victoria's discriminatory comments. The Department of Transportation announces immediate investigation into airline discrimination practices industry-wide. Congressional representatives call for hearings on civil rights in commercial aviation. But Diana's focus remains on immediate implementation of change rather than publicity management. She's using this moment of attention to create permanent transformation, not just temporary accountability. Throughout these unfolding consequences, the 200 passengers on Flight 847 process their role as witnesses to corporate justice in real time. Their reactions range from shock to admiration to discomfort, with the intensity of accountability they've observed. Michael Davis, the retired professor who spoke up for Diana, approaches her with obvious emotion. Ms. Rivers, I've been flying for 60 years. I've seen discrimination that went unchallenged because passengers and crew didn't want to get involved. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like. Carmen Rodriguez, the college student from economy, pushes through the first-class curtain again. Ms. Rivers, can I get your autograph? You just showed me what it means to stand up for yourself with dignity and power. But not all passengers support Diana's response. A businessman in seat 3D mutters loud enough to be heard. Seems excessive to destroy a man's career over a simple misunderstanding. Diana addresses his comment directly. Sir, what did you consider a simple misunderstanding about demanding my removal based on my skin color? The businessman looks uncomfortable with the direct question. Well, I mean, maybe he was just doing his job. His job description includes racial discrimination? Diana asks. Company policy requires treating black passengers as security threats. The exchange illustrates ongoing challenges. Some passengers witnessed obvious discrimination but prefer to minimize its significance rather than acknowledge uncomfortable truths about bias in spaces they consider normal. Robert Kim, who recorded the entire incident, approaches Diana with his phone. Ms. Rivers, I've documented everything that happened tonight. Would you like copies of the footage for your legal proceedings? Diana accepts his offer gratefully. Robert, your decision to record this interaction created accountability that might not have existed otherwise. Thank you for not staying silent when you witnessed injustice. Sarah Thompson ends her live stream with a direct appeal to viewers. If you witnessed discrimination tonight through this stream, share it. Talk about it. Don't let this moment fade into forgotten viral content. Use it to recognize bias when you see it in your own life. The viral footage creates broader conversations about discrimination that extend far beyond aviation. Viewers share their own experiences of being questioned, removed, or humiliated in spaces where others assumed they didn't belong. Diana realizes her individual experience has become a catalyst for national discussion about race privilege and accountability. The consequences extend beyond Reid's arrest or Victoria's social downfall. They're forcing American society to examine assumptions about who belongs where and why. Agent Thompson's investigation expands rapidly as additional evidence emerges. Diana's legal team provides documentation of buried discrimination, complaints, settlement agreements, and internal communications, showing awareness of ongoing problems. The FBI discovers that Reed's behavior represents a pattern of discrimination across multiple flights and passengers. Previous complaints were settled quietly, complainants silenced by non-disclosure agreements, incidents downplayed to avoid negative publicity. Agent Thompson interviews flight crews, who describe uncomfortable incidents they witnessed but were afraid to report. Gate agents share stories of passengers being questioned excessively based on appearance. Customer service representatives reveal training that encouraged extra scrutiny of travelers who didn't match certain profiles. The investigation reveals that Prestige Airways, under previous management, had essentially institutionalized discriminatory practices while maintaining public commitments to equality. Diana's acquisition interrupted a culture that prioritized certain passengers' comfort over others' civil rights. Federal prosecutors begin building cases not just against Reed, but against supervisors who buried complaints and executives who created policies that enabled discrimination. The investigation expands from individual accountability to institutional transformation. Diana cooperates fully with federal investigators while simultaneously implementing internal changes that exceed legal requirements. She's not waiting for court orders to reform airline culture. She's using her corporate authority to create immediate transformation. The message to the aviation industry is clear. Discrimination will face serious legal consequences, and corporate leadership will be held accountable for cultures that enable bias. As Agent Thompson concludes Reed's arrest and begins broader investigation, Diana prepares to address the long-term changes necessary to prevent future incidents. Individual accountability is just the beginning of the transformation she has planned. 30 days after Christmas Eve, Marcus Reed sits on a plastic chair in a cramped government office, clutching paper number 47 from the unemployment queue. The fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting harsh shadows that make everyone look tired and defeated. Reed looks older than his 52 years. The silver hair that used to be perfectly styled now grows unevenly thinning on top. The confidence that once made him seem commanding has evaporated, replaced by the defeated posture of a man watching his life disintegrate in real time. The uniform with 4 gold stripes is gone, replaced by an ill-fitting suit from a discount store. His Italian leather shoes are scuffed, his watch once a symbol of aviation prestige sold to pay legal fees. The transformation from airline captain to unemployment applicant took exactly 27 days. The federal charges came first. Civil rights violations under Title T, abuse of federal authority, conspiracy to deny constitutional rights. Reed's lawyers recommended a plea bargain to avoid prison time, but the federal prosecutor insisted on guilty pleas to all charges. Reed's pilot's license was permanently revoked by the Federal Aviation Administration. The Pilot Records Improvement Act ensures that his discrimination violations will follow him forever, making him unemployable in any aviation capacity anywhere in the world. Prestige Airways fired him for cause, which voided his pension and eliminated severance pay. Reed's mortgage on this house in Connecticut went into default within 6 weeks. His wife Claudia filed for divorce and moved to her sister's house in Florida, taking their joint savings accounts and leaving Reed with legal debts and shame. The viral footage of his arrest made Reed unemployable in any customer-facing industry. Background checks reveal his name associated with federal discrimination charges, viral videos of racist behavior and professional disgrace that makes him a liability to any employer. Reed's fall from grace becomes a cautionary tale throughout the aviation industry. Pilot training programs use footage of his arrest as examples of how bias destroys careers. Flight attendant seminars show his confrontation with Diana as a case study in how discrimination escalates from bad judgment to federal crimes. But Reed's personal consequences pale compared to the broader transformation his actions triggered. Victoria Ashford's reckoning proves even more complete than Reed's. Unlike Reed, whose discrimination was contained within aviation, Victoria's fall occurs across every aspect of her privileged life. The viral footage of her demanding Diana's removal spreads beyond aviation into pharmaceutical, social, and charity circles where Victoria held influence. Her family's pharmaceutical company issues public statements distancing themselves from her discriminatory comments. Victoria's board positions with 3 major charities are terminated within a week. Organizations dedicated to social justice cannot maintain associations with someone who publicly supported racial discrimination. Her name is removed from donor lists, gala committees, and society page mentions. The country clubs where Victoria spent her social life quietly revoke her membership. Her applications for membership at exclusive establishments are rejected. The social circles that once celebrated her wealth now treat her as a pariah whose presence threatens their reputations. Victoria's Instagram followers, once numbering in the millions, abandon her account in massive numbers. Brands terminate sponsorship agreements. Fashion magazines drop her from society coverage. The social media influence she cultivated for years disappears overnight. Most devastating of all, Victoria's own family withdraws support. Her pharmaceutical executive father issues a public statement condemning discrimination and noting that Victoria's views don't represent family values. Her trust fund access is restricted pending review of her behavior's impact on family business interests. Victoria attempts damage control through apology tours, discrimination awareness workshops, and public charity work. But the internet never forgets, and her discriminatory comments become permanent stains on her reputation. She eventually retreats to a modest apartment in Connecticut, far from the Palm Beach estate, where she planned to spend Christmas morning. Her privileged life becomes a cautionary tale about how quickly social status can disappear when built on exclusion rather than inclusion. Victoria's downfall sends clear messages to other wealthy passengers. Discriminatory behavior will have consequences that extend far beyond individual incidents. The social media age makes privilege no protection against accountability. Isabella Martinez's transformation from fearful flight attendant to empowered executive represents the positive changes Diana implements across Prestige Airways. Her promotion to Director of Passenger Experience and Chief Ethics Officer comes with responsibilities that reshape airline culture fundamentally. Isabella's new annual salary of $145,000 transforms her family's economic situation immediately. She moves her 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, from public school, struggling with budget cuts, to a private academy with excellent arts programs. Her parents' medical expenses become manageable rather than overwhelming. But Isabella's real impact comes through policy changes she implements to prevent future discrimination. Her first initiative creates anonymous reporting networks that allow crew members to document bias without fear of retaliation. Reports go directly to Diana's office rather than through supervisors, who might bury complaints. Isabella institutes mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees, but not the superficial diversity seminars common in corporate America. Her programs include real-world scenarios, role-playing exercises, and clear consequences for discriminatory behavior. Most importantly, Isabella creates passenger advocacy protocols. Any customer who feels discriminated against can request immediate escalation to executive-level review. Complaints receive rapid response, thorough investigation, and public accountability when violations are confirmed. Isabella's background as a flight attendant gives her credibility with frontline employees. They trust her understanding of operational challenges while respecting her commitment to passenger dignity. Her leadership proves that promoting integrity creates better business outcomes than protecting discrimination. Under Isabella's guidance, Prestige Airways becomes the first airline to publish annual discrimination reports showing complaint numbers, investigation outcomes, and policy improvements. Transparency becomes competitive advantage rather than liability. Isabella's success story spreads throughout the aviation industry. Other airlines begin promoting frontline employees who demonstrate ethical leadership rather than just operational efficiency. The message becomes clear: moral courage advances careers. James Mitchell's promotion from first officer to captain represents broader changes in aviation leadership diversity that Diana prioritizes. His willingness to challenge Reed's discriminatory authority, despite hierarchical aviation culture, demonstrates exactly the kind of integrity Diana seeks in company leadership. James's first assignment as captain takes him back to the Chicago-Miami route, where Reed's discrimination occurred. Flying the same aircraft covering the same route, but creating entirely different passenger experiences, becomes symbolic of airline transformation. Under James's leadership, Flight 847 becomes a model of inclusive service. His pre-flight announcements emphasize respect for all passengers regardless of appearance, accent, or economic assumptions. His crew understands that excellence means dignity, not deference to privilege. James implements cockpit protocols that require first officers to challenge any captain behavior that might constitute discrimination. Aviation's traditional hierarchy, which once silenced dissent, now encourages ethical intervention when passenger rights are threatened. James also leads pilot recruitment efforts focused on diversifying aviation leadership. His military background and commercial experience make him effective at identifying candidates who combine technical competence with ethical integrity. Under his guidance, Prestige Airways becomes an industry leader in pilot diversity. Most significantly, James creates mentorship programs for minority aviation professionals. His own experience witnessing discrimination, but feeling powerless to intervene, helps him guide others facing similar challenges. He shows them how to speak up effectively while building careers that advance justice. James's leadership extends beyond Prestige Airways. He speaks at aviation conferences about ethical leadership, participates in congressional hearings on airline discrimination, and consults with other carriers seeking to improve inclusive practices. The transformation of Flight 847's cockpit from Reed's discriminatory authority to James's ethical leadership becomes a powerful symbol of how quickly institutional culture can change when accountability meets opportunity. Diana's reformation of Prestige Airways becomes a business school case study in how ethical leadership creates competitive advantage rather than operational burden. Her changes prove that treating all passengers with dignity generates better financial outcomes than catering exclusively to privileged demographics. Financial results validate Diana's approach. Despite initial stock market concerns about negative publicity from Reed's arrest, Prestige Airways' performance improves dramatically under ethical leadership. Customer satisfaction ratings reach industry highs as passengers of all backgrounds report feeling welcomed and respected. The airline's Net Promoter Score, measuring customer likelihood to recommend the service, increases by 40% within 6 months. Social media sentiment analysis shows overwhelmingly positive responses to Diana's leadership and cultural transformation. More importantly, discrimination complaints drop to near zero. The combination of employee empowerment, clear accountability, and executive commitment creates airline culture where bias cannot flourish unchallenged. Diana's transparency initiatives include public release of discrimination complaint data, investigation outcomes, and policy improvements. Rather than hiding problems, she demonstrates how addressing bias honestly builds customer trust and employee loyalty. Other airlines struggle to compete with Prestige Airways' reputation for inclusive service. Business travelers, particularly women and minorities, specifically choose Diana's airline because they feel confident about respectful treatment. The diversity of Prestige Airways' workforce increases dramatically under Diana's leadership. When employees know discrimination will be addressed seriously rather than ignored, conveniently, workplace culture becomes attractive to talented professionals from all backgrounds. Industry analysts recognize Diana's transformation as fundamental shift from defensive compliance with anti-discrimination laws to proactive creation of inclusive culture. Her approach becomes the gold standard other airlines attempt to replicate. Diana's actions on Flight 847 create ripple effects throughout the entire commercial aviation industry. Other CEOs realize that discrimination incidents will face social media scrutiny, federal investigation, and executive accountability they can no longer ignore. The Department of Transportation, energized by public attention to Diana's case, implements enhanced anti-discrimination monitoring across all airlines. Federal oversight increases, complaint investigation accelerates, and penalties for discrimination. Violations become severe enough to motivate prevention. Congressional hearings on airline discrimination feature Diana as key witness advocating for stronger federal protections. Her testimony combines personal experience with executive insight, making compelling arguments for legislative reforms. The Federal Aviation Administration updates pilot training requirements to include comprehensive bias awareness education. Captain authority remains important for flight safety, but no longer provides cover for discriminatory behavior toward passengers. Industry trade associations develop new standards for passenger treatment that exceed legal minimums. Airlines compete on inclusivity metrics rather than just efficiency or profitability measures. Aviation law schools begin teaching Diana's case as example of how individual courage can create institutional change. Her strategic approach acquiring the airline to reform it from within demonstrates how entrepreneurial success can advance social justice. Most significantly, passenger behavior changes across the industry. Travelers become more willing to document discrimination, challenge bias, and demand accountability when witnessing unfair treatment. The bystander effect weakens as people realize their voices matter. The transformation of commercial aviation from tolerating discrimination to actively preventing it represents permanent cultural shift that extends far beyond any single airline or incident. The federal prosecution of Reed and subsequent investigations create legal precedents that strengthen civil rights enforcement in commercial transportation. Federal courts clarify that airline employees exercising federal authority cannot discriminate without facing serious criminal consequences. Settlement agreements with previous discrimination victims total over $50 million. But more importantly, they include structural reforms that prevent future incidents. Court-supervised monitoring ensures compliance with anti-discrimination commitments. The Americans with Disabilities Act is strengthened to include clearer protections against appearance-based discrimination that often affects travelers with invisible disabilities, different cultural dress or economic circumstances that don't match stereotypes about first-class passengers. State civil rights agencies coordinate with federal authorities to investigate discrimination patterns across multiple airlines. The comprehensive approach prevents companies from moving problematic employees between carriers without accountability. Legal education programs use Diana's case to teach civil rights law in practical contexts. Law students learn how federal statutes apply to real-world discrimination and how individual courage can create institutional change. The case also influences international aviation agreements. Other countries strengthen their own anti-discrimination protections for air travelers, creating global standards that protect passenger dignity regardless of local bias. Most importantly, the legal outcomes establish that discrimination in commercial aviation will face swift, serious, and lasting consequences. The message deters future incidents while empowering passengers to demand respectful treatment. Diana's strategic approach, documenting discrimination thoroughly before revealing her authority, creates legal evidence that would have been impossible to obtain through traditional complaint processes. Her method becomes a model for investigating institutional bias. As the 30-day transformation period concludes, Diana prepares for the most challenging aspect of her airline reformation, ensuring that positive changes become permanent culture rather than temporary compliance. The real test of her leadership will come in sustaining transformation when public attention moves to other stories. But the foundation she has built, empowered employees, accountable leadership, transparent processes, and zero tolerance for discrimination creates resilient culture that can withstand both internal pressures and external challenges. The aviation industry will never be the same, and that's exactly what Diana intended when she decided to buy an airline rather than just file a complaint about discriminatory treatment. 1 year to the day after Captain Reed demanded her removal from first-class Diana Rivers Board's Prestige Airways Flight 847 from Chicago to Miami. Snow falls outside the terminal windows, just as it did 12 months ago, but everything else has changed completely. Diana deliberately chooses seat 38F in economy, the exact seat Reed tried to force her into for people like her. Today she sits there by choice, observing the transformation she created through one night's refusal to accept discrimination silently. Captain James Mitchell's voice comes over the intercom with the pre-flight announcement, "Good morning and welcome aboard Prestige Airways Flight 847. I'm Captain Mitchell, and I want to personally ensure that every passenger experiences respectful service regardless of where you're seated or how you're dressed. Excellence means treating everyone with dignity." The announcement would have been impossible under Reed's command. Diana smiles as she listens to James' established tone that protects all passengers rather than prioritizing some over others. Isabella Martinez, now Director of Passenger Experience, walks through both first class and economy during boarding. Greeting passengers personally and ensuring crew members demonstrate the inclusive service culture Diana built. Isabella's confidence and authority represent transformation from fearful compliance to empowered leadership. As passengers board, Diana observes interactions that would have been unthinkable under previous management. A young Muslim woman in hijab receives warm welcome in first class without document scrutiny or suspicious glances. An elderly Latino gentleman using a walker gets patient assistance without assumptions about his ticket validity. Most meaningfully, Diana watches a young black girl, perhaps 11 years old, walk confidently toward first class. The girl wears jeans and a hoodie, exactly the casual attire that triggered Reed's discrimination, but crew members welcome her with genuine smiles and respectful service. The girl sits in seat 2A, the same seat where Diana faced Reed's hostility. Watching her settle in comfortably reading a book about aerospace engineering, Diana feels the emotional weight of transformation accomplished. Diana approaches the girl during the flight. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Maya." The girl responds shyly. "I won a scholarship contest for good grades. This is my first time in first class." Diana's throat tightens with emotion. "Maya, this seat belongs to you, not because of how you look, but because of who you are and the dreams you carry. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise." Maya nods seriously, not recognizing that she's speaking to the woman who fought to ensure her welcome. "My mum says respect is earned, not given based on appearance." Diana smiles. "Your mother is very wise." As Flight 847 continues toward Miami, Diana observes dozens of small moments that demonstrate cultural transformation. Crew members engage respectfully with passengers regardless of accent, appearance, or economic status. First-class service maintains excellence while eliminating exclusivity based on discriminatory assumptions. A Hispanic businessman in economy receives the same courteous attention as wealthy passengers in premium seats. When his laptop battery dies, flight attendants offer charging assistance without questioning whether he belongs on the aircraft. A black woman traveling with her infant receives patient help with baby supplies without crew members assuming she needs extra supervision or poses additional challenges. The assistance is offered as customer service, not surveillance. Most significantly, when a white passenger complains about noise from children in economy, Crew members politely explain that families have equal rights to travel comfortably. There's no attempt to relocate economy passengers to avoid first-class complaints. Diana realizes these interactions represent more than improved customer service. They reflect fundamental changes in how power operates within commercial aviation. Crew authority now protects passenger dignity rather than passenger privilege. Isabella approaches Diana's seat during the flight. Although they've worked together closely over the past year, Isabella still doesn't recognize her CEO in casual clothes sitting in economy. "Ma'am, can I get you anything extra blanket, perhaps?" Isabella asks with genuine concern. Diana accepts the offer gratefully. "Thank you. The service on this flight has been exceptional." Isabella beams with pride. "We work hard to ensure every passenger feels valued. Our CEO believes dignity should never depend on seat location." Diana nods, hiding her smile. "She sounds like a remarkable leader." "She is," Isabella responds earnestly. "She taught us that treating people well isn't just good business, it's basic human decency." Through her phone, Diana monitors social media discussions about airline discrimination over the past year. The conversation has shifted dramatically from accepting bias as inevitable to demanding accountability as standard. Passengers now confidently document discriminatory treatment, knowing their voices will be heard and their experiences validated. The bystander effect has weakened as travelers realize their intervention can prevent others from experiencing humiliation. Other airlines struggle to compete with Prestige Airways' reputation for inclusive service. Diana's transformation created industry pressure to reform discriminatory practices rather than just hide them more effectively. The hashtag #DianaRivers remains associated with corporate accountability and ethical leadership. Business schools teach her acquisition strategy as example of how entrepreneurial success can advance social justice. But Diana's proudest achievement appears in her email inbox, thousands of letters from passengers who experienced better treatment because of changes she implemented. Their stories confirm that individual courage created lasting institutional reform. One letter particularly moves her, "Ms. Rivers, I'm a transgender woman who was afraid to travel because of past discrimination. Last week I flew Prestige Airways and was treated with complete respect. Thank you for making travel safe for people like me." Another. "Dear Diana, my son has autism and stimming behaviors that sometimes make other passengers uncomfortable. Your crew welcomed him warmly and helped him feel included rather than tolerated. You've given him confidence to explore the world. The personal impact testimonials validate Diana's belief that business success should create human dignity rather than simply generate profit." As Flight 847 approaches Miami, Diana reflects on the year of transformation following Reed's arrest and Victoria's downfall. Individual accountability was important, but cultural change proved more significant. The young Muslim woman in hijab has spent the flight reading medical textbooks preparing for residency applications. Diana realizes she's witnessing someone whose career might have been derailed by discrimination, but instead receives encouragement to pursue ambitious goals. Maya, the 11-year-old scholarship winner, has struck up conversation with other passengers about her interest in aerospace engineering. First-class travelers encourage her dreams rather than questioning her presence. The Hispanic businessman has exchanged business cards with contacts who might help his consulting firm expand. Professional networking happens naturally when passengers feel welcomed rather than scrutinized. These connections represent the real victory Diana achieved, not just preventing discrimination, but creating environments where all passengers can thrive, contribute, and succeed. Diana's phone buzzes with message from her legal team. Federal investigation concludes Reed case helped strengthen civil rights enforcement industry-wide. Discrimination complaints down 73% across commercial aviation. The statistical vindication matters, but Diana's emotional satisfaction comes from observing transformed human interactions around her. As the aircraft begins its descent into Miami, Diana prepares to address her fellow passengers through a brief statement James Mitchell has agreed to share. James's voice returns to the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for landing, I want to share a message from a passenger who believes in the power of treating each other with dignity and respect. Diana stands in the economy aisle speaking loudly enough for the entire aircraft to hear. Fellow travelers, 1 year ago tonight, discrimination on this exact flight route was challenged and defeated. That victory happened because passengers, crew members, and decent people chose courage over comfort. Passengers throughout the aircraft listen intently, some recognizing the significance of the date. Change doesn't start in boardrooms or courtrooms. Diana continues. It starts when ordinary people refuse to accept that injustice is ordinary. When you see someone being treated unfairly, speak up. Your voice might be the one that changes everything. The cabin responds with spontaneous applause. Passengers of all backgrounds clap for the message of dignity and mutual respect Diana represents. Remember, Diana concludes, you never know who's sitting next to you, but more importantly, they never know the power you carry to make their journey better. Maya, the young scholarship winner, raises her hand. Who are you? Diana smiles. I'm someone who learned that the most powerful revenge against discrimination is building a world where it can never happen again. As passengers disembark in Miami on Christmas morning, families reunite, children hug grandparents, and love transcends all the boundaries that people try to create. Diana watches the universal joy of connection and realizes this is what she fought for, a world where dignity doesn't depend on appearance, accent, or assumptions about worth. The snow that delayed flights last Christmas Eve has given way to Miami sunshine. The discrimination that poisoned travel experiences has given way to inclusive service. The fear that silenced witnesses has given way to courageous intervention. Diana Rivers doesn't just own an airline anymore. She's helped create a movement that recognizes every person's right to be treated with respect, regardless of where they sit, how they look, or what others assume about their lives. Walking through Miami International Airport toward her family's Christmas celebration, Diana carries the satisfaction of knowing that thousands of future travelers will experience dignity because she refused to accept discrimination silently on one snowy Christmas Eve. The most powerful victories aren't about crushing enemies. They're about building worlds where enemies' weapons become obsolete. Sometimes the most important seat isn't in first class. It's wherever someone stands up and says, "This is wrong, and it ends now." Diana Rivers proved that one voice, when combined with courage and resources, can change an industry, transform corporate culture, and give hope to anyone who's ever been told they don't belong. If this story inspired you to stand up for others, I want you to do 3 things right now. First, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message of hope and justice. Send it to a friend, a family member, or someone you know who's faced discrimination. Let them know their dignity matters and their voice has power. Second, hit that like button. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you of your own experiences with bias or courage. Your likes help us reach more people who need these stories of justice and transformation. Third, and this is the most important one, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of people who believe everyone deserves respect, who stand up for others when they see injustice, and who know that real change happens when ordinary people choose courage over comfort. In the comments, tell me about a time you witnessed discrimination or a time you stood up for someone else. Share your story, because when we speak up, we build a world that doesn't just fly, it soars. Remember, you never know who's sitting next to you, but more importantly, they never know the power you carry to make their journey better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story where justice meets courage and ordinary people do extraordinary things.